Good evening and welcome to Inside City Hall for Friday, September 19th, 2025. I'm Bobby Kuza. Zohran Mamdani once again gets support from a leading state Democrat. Meanwhile, Andrew Cuomo was in Queens where he spoke at a mosque criticizing Mamdani's socialist agenda. Our Dan Rivley joins me now with all that and more from the campaign trail in tonight's top story. Good evening, Dan.
Hey, good evening, Bobby. So with Mamdani, so much of his agenda requires raising taxes that have to be approved in Albany. It's good for him that he now has the support from Governor Hochul, the state speaker, Speaker of the Assembly, and the state Senate Majority Leader. And he joined the Majority Leader out and about on the Upper West Side. And it was a warm reception from residents in the area, a little different from Andrew Cuomo. He visited a mosque in Queens, but got heckled by Mamdani supporters who followed him into the mosque. Zohran Mamdani walking around the Amsterdam public houses on the Upper West Side with Andrea Stewart-Cousins, the state Senate Majority Leader who grew up here. More support from top Democrats.
I voted for you. We're so excited about you.
And a few New Yorkers, too.
They deserve those representatives to work together.
Mamdani promised a warmer relationship between City Hall and Albany as lawmakers consider raising taxes to cover potential federal aid cuts, as well as the mayoral frontrunners' policies.
We understand that affordability is the key.
Mamdani's reception much warmer than the one Andrew Cuomo received.
Shame on you! Shame on you! Shame on you!
From a group of Mamdani supporters at this Queens mosque. They heckled him as the former governor tried to address the congregants about Mamdani and his soft approach to prostitution and drug use.
I don't shake any hands. See there, I don't shake their hand.
After he left, he talked about his message to the congregants about Mamdani, who is Muslim.
What he believes is going to be repugnant to the Muslim community. The Muslim community are not socialists.
Meanwhile, Mayor Eric Adams visited seniors in the Bronx and told reporters he was grateful for the state Democratic Party chair, Jay Jacobs, deciding against endorsing Mamdani, citing his support of the Democratic Socialists of America.
If we allow those policies that the DSA and Zohran is trying to implement, it's going to take us back, and it's going to hurt the city in general, but specifically it's going to hurt black and brown communities, and I'm not going to be silent. And so thanks, Jay.
Meanwhile, Republican Curtis Sliwa at Union Square preached nonviolence.
Hopefully this will resonate with all the candidates, the supporters, the friends. Bring the rhetoric down. Let's have the debates. Let the people decide who the next mayor of the city of New York is going to be.
Meanwhile, at that news conference with Mamdani, the state Senate Majority Leader Andrea Stewart-Cousins was asked about Jay Jacobs, the head of the state party, declining to endorse Mamdani. She thinks he should as the leader of the Democratic Party in the state. But as for whether Jacobs should step down, she said that should be a decision left to Governor Hochul. Bobby?
So, Dan, the heckling of Cuomo at the mosque seemed kind of extraordinary to me. I mean, you don't see candidates get heckled at houses of worship very often. Did it feel like it was something that was sort of staged by Mamdani supporters, or did it really feel like these were worshipers who were supporters of Mamdani but just didn't like Cuomo showing up?
No, these were clearly Mamdani supporters. They had crisp white shirts with his mayoral logo on it, the buttons. I should say that the congregants listened quite respectfully, and the imam there was even taking some heat for having Cuomo speak to them. And he said, look, we need everyone, anyone who wants to speak to us, we need to invite them and let them in. And Mamdani denies that this was any kind of campaign stunt on his campaign's behalf. Obviously, Cuomo sees it as a sandbagging and did not like that this was a heckling going on in a house of worship where the men pray. But it showed how really sharp these policy differences are. You heard Cuomo being heckled about his support for Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and all his past scandals that led him from office.
All right. Thank you, Dan. Stay there for a minute. I'm going to bring in our Kelly Mena, who's also been with the mayor today and pretty much every day while he's been on the campaign trail, a lot more than he had been in past weeks. But he's been talking a lot lately about this issue with school bathrooms and kids being allowed to use a bathroom that aligns with their gender identity. All of a sudden, we're hearing sort of some new messaging from the mayor on this.
Yeah, it seems like the horse carriages and the bathroom issues are new issues for the mayor. As you mentioned, I'm with the mayor every day, and he's been having heavy campaign schedules. Earlier today, while he was in the Bronx visiting those seniors, he doubled down on some comments he made earlier this week about changing the policy at public schools when it comes to students who identify with a certain gender. That comments first started 2 days ago when he was in Harlem talking to, visiting some mosques. He said that comment in passing, but since then there has been some reporting from the New York Times that a letter came from the federal government to a couple of cities, including New York, about possibly pooling federal funds to magnet schools if they weren't coming into alignment with some of the policies from the federal government. They believe that children who are using bathrooms that they identify with but aren't necessarily in alignment with the sex that they're born with at birth are a violation of some federal laws, and for that reason the city needs to come in alignment with that. Mayor Adams doubling down on possibly changing that policy. Here's what he said earlier today.
We're going so far away from common sense. I don't support girls and boys using the same restroom. I don't support that. We're going to always respect how one identifies themselves, but my utmost importance is to ensure that when my children are in school, they're in there in a safe environment.
Yeah, and that is actually the mayor from earlier this week, not earlier today, but that now becoming a real controversial stance for the mayor, saying that it now is aligning with many of the policies coming out of the Trump administration, more Republican, more conservative views. We know that the mayor says he's a Democrat, but he's obviously, with these statements, maybe appealing to a broader voter base as he seeks that second term in office and is trying to hopefully get voters to bring him out of the single digits when it comes to the polls and maybe into the double digits, Bobby.
But then there's the other question of what authority he has to change the bathroom policy at city schools, right? Because there's some sense that if he were to change the policy, that could run afoul of some other state laws, right?
Yeah, that's right. That there is actually state policy that specifically says children in public schools are required to use the restroom that they identify with their gender, and that it's not the federal policies that are coming from the federal government that they should be following. So it's going to be interesting to see how he would go about changing this. It would include some state support or state officials there. I don't think this is something that they're looking to change anytime soon. So unclear why the mayor feels like this is something that is even achievable or something that could get done within the next couple of weeks or next couple of months.
All right, we're going to leave it there. Dan Rivoli, Kelly Mena, thank you for joining me. And before we head to break, a preview of this week's Off Topic on Politics podcast. Ayanna Harry joined Kelly and me to talk about the mayor's race and Mayor Adams' support for banning horse carriages. Here is part of our conversation.
That Marist poll found 88% of city voters say the city is not affordable. Like 88%. That's almost 9 out of 10 people. Zohran Mamdani's talking to that, and he's talking to issues that people really care about. And when you're not backing him, I think to some voters it feels like, well, you don't get what's going on in my life, and you're not talking about what impacts me on a daily basis. And I do think it starts to raise questions as to, well, why are you there anyway? And why can't we try something new? Why can't we do something different?
And you can catch the full podcast episode wherever you get your podcast and on New York One's YouTube channel. The episode will also air on New York One this Saturday night at 9:30 p.m. following the You Decide podcast with Errol Lewis. And speaking of podcasts, a reminder that Off Topic on Politics is hosting a special live crossover event with You Decide right here in Chelsea on Monday, September 29th. I will join Errol and our Courtney Gross for a conversation alongside some special guests. It's happening at Racket NYC, and it is free to attend, but you do need to RSVP. Head to NewYork1.com or the Spectrum News app for more information. It is time for a break. We got a lot more coming up in tonight's show. Up next, President Trump says he wants to remove the federal prosecutor investigating State Attorney General Letitia James. We will explain, and later State Senator Julia Salazar joins me to discuss her arrest yesterday while protesting against ICE in Lower Manhattan. Stay with us.
Every day tells a new story. At Mornings on One, we're dedicated to bringing you the stories that matter most to start your day. With in-depth coverage of the day's developing news.
I'm Pat Turner. Here are the stories we're following this morning.
And weather updates every 10 minutes.
Some morning sunshine possible, clouds take over.
It's our responsibility to get you the information you need before you head out the door. Mornings on One. Weekdays starting at 6 on the Spectrum News app. Free for Spectrum customers.
It's only a game. It's only a little rivalry. It's only a ritual.
When I come home late,
and a few generations.
you're always there.
And only Spectrum TV includes all your favorite streaming apps with live TV at no extra cost. It's only a game. It's only everything.
I'm Sandra, this is Jorge, and we were adopted in 2019. I remember when they first came to us, Michael was already a teenager. The whole cliche of they're so lucky to have you guys, and it's the other way around. They have changed our family for the better. They chose to love us. They didn't have to. They chose us. Family.
Learn about adopting a teen from foster care. You can't imagine the reward. Visit adoptuskids.org.
And that's a look at some of what's in the papers this morning.
You done with the sports section?
Today's story is about the latest chapter for a beloved local business.
It's a beautiful day with temperatures in the 60s, but showers are expected in the next hour.
In a city that's always on the go, it's important to stop to hear the stories that connect us.
The news that matters to New Yorkers. That's what brings us together. That's Mornings on One.
Weekdays starting at 6.
Exclusively on Spectrum.
Welcome back to Inside City Hall. President Trump plans to fire the attorney whose office had been investigating mortgage fraud allegations against New York State Attorney General Letitia James. That is according to a person familiar with the matter. The Trump administration had been pushing to bring criminal charges against James, who, of course, spearheaded litigation against the president. Our Kevin Fry in our Washington, D.C. bureau joins me now with the very latest. Good evening, Kevin.
Hey, good evening, Bobby. And President Trump essentially confirming this during comments in the Oval Office, suggesting that he does not believe that the U.S. Attorney in the Eastern District of Virginia is up for the job in no short order, in no small terms, because he's unwilling to go ahead with this sort of indictment. Here's some of what he said.
It looks to me like she's very guilty of something, but I really don't know. I know that the U.S. Attorney from the Eastern District, or from that district in Virginia, that he was approved by 2 Democrat senators who, in my opinion, are among the worst.
So you want him fired? You want him out?
Yeah, I want him out, yeah.
Of course, James has been accused by a Trump appointee of mortgage fraud. This is something that same appointee has accused a variety of individuals of. It seems to be kind of a new favorite tactic of the Trump administration. And critics say this is really just an avenue for them to pursue retribution against some of Trump's perceived enemies. Of course, as you mentioned, Bobby, Tish James did succeed with that civil case against Trump in the lead up to the 2024 election.
So, Kevin, the president likes to talk about it, certainly as he was on lead up to the election last year, talked about the political weaponization of the justice system. It would certainly seem now that he's in office to be something very similar that he's trying to carry out against Letitia James.
And arguably a bit more blatant in some of what he's doing. At least that's what the critics of this White House would say, that they're essentially trying to turn the DOJ against individuals. But the fact that you have folks that are within the apparatus of the Department of Justice trying to push back, unwilling to move ahead, is creating all sorts of obviously, shall we say, musical chairs when it comes to people and people getting kicked out. Remember, we saw some of this sort of same dynamic where you saw pressure on local U.S. attorneys and local officials within local U.S. attorneys' offices involving the Eric Adams case and the corruption charges there.
Kevin, let me ask you about a different topic. We know the Republicans are trying to get through some measures to create funding for the government in order to avert a government shutdown, but that is running into some resistance in the Senate. What's the latest?
Yeah, so obviously we have a ticking clock here that's leading up to the end of the month when we are facing the potential for a government shutdown. The House Republicans have passed their version of the bill, but it was not able to get the necessary votes to overcome the filibuster over on the Senate side, and that's in no small part because the Democrats are not providing the necessary votes. The Democratic argument here is that if you're going to pass this bill to keep the government open, at least temporarily, they should also go in and fix some of the things that Democrats say are broken based on some of the policies that the Trump administration and Republicans on Capitol Hill have passed, including concerns about access to Medicaid and, notably, an upcoming deadline where we're going to see some of those ACA, Affordable Care Act subsidies start to go away. And so the argument, the campaigning message that you're seeing from Democrats right now goes something like this.
Donald Trump and the Republican Party have launched an all-out assault on health care in America. It's unacceptable, unconscionable, un-American, and Democrats are not going to stand for it at all. We don't work for Donald Trump. We don't work for J.D. Vance. We don't work for Elon Musk. We work for the American people.
Of course, Republicans counter-argue that Democrats are being irresponsible in their unwillingness to pass this bill and keep the government open. One thing to keep a close eye on here is Senator Chuck Schumer. He faced a lot of pushback earlier this year when he kind of allowed a spending bill to advance then to avoid a government shutdown at the time. He faced a lot of flack from Democrats. He saw his polling go down as you saw Democratic voters wanting to see members of their party put up a fight against Trump. Right now, he and Jeffries are in lockstep in their approach right now to this potential shutdown, basically saying we need these various things to be included for us to get a vote to avoid a shutdown.
Kevin, before I let you go, I have some sad news to share with our viewers. This is the last time they are going to be seeing you on our airwaves as you are moving on to undoubtedly greater things. I know you've been with Spectrum News for several years and for New York One as well, covering our New York congressional delegation, keeping up with our congressional representatives down in D.C., holding them to account. And I think, I know I speak for our New York One colleagues and probably for a lot of our audience as well in saying that we are going to be very sad to see you go.
That's very kind, Bobby, and hopefully the audience agrees with you. I will say that for a small-town boy from Pennsylvania who got his start working in the halls of the Louisiana State Capitol, to be in Washington covering such a powerful congressional delegation on day after day for such a beloved institution as New York One is really kind of hard for me to wrap my head around. And one thing I do want to emphasize is that you see me, you see you see all of our great reporters on air every day, but you don't see the people behind the scenes. And so just to give them a shout out in particular, Bob, Maria, Charlie, Chloe, Afia, Mike Kurtz, and Richie, and I'm going to be undoubtedly missing some folks. A big thank you to all of them because they keep me sane and keep me running and keep the show on the tracks, and they undoubtedly make me better every single day of my time with New York One. So, Bobby, thank you to you, and thank you to all of our viewers as well.
All right, you're going to be leaving a big hole that will be difficult to fill. But again, good luck, Kevin, on all your future endeavors. I'm sure much greater things are ahead.
Thanks, sir.
All right, it's time now for a break. Coming up, the proposals to build new casinos here in the city have raised a number of community concerns, including about traffic. We will bring you a report on how developers plan to mitigate traffic next. Stay with us.
This election year is all about New York City. There are 51 council seats up for grabs, races for our next city comptroller and the next public advocate.
Plus, an unprecedented race for mayor. That puts the power in your hands to decide who will run our city.
Our team of political experts will be covering every angle of this election to keep you informed on how it could affect you, so you can feel confident with your decision at the polls.
Stay with Spectrum News New York 1 for Decision 2025, exclusively on Spectrum.
Spectrum TV, isn't that only live TV?
No, it's only all my favorite streaming apps with live TV.
Okay.
It's only all included at no extra cost, and that's the magic of math. Will this be on the test? Sure, why not?
It's only one simple payment for all our TV. We gotta simplify and win. Winning is equally important.
If not, more so.
Yeah!
Only Spectrum TV, fixed TV.
Mom was always organized, but she started forgetting to pay her bills on time.
And she'd buy the same gifts over and over.
Telling the girls about my Alzheimer's diagnosis was really hard. At first, we had our cries, but then we were like, okay, let's make a plan.
Early detection gave us time to adapt together.
It's so important for you to think about what you can do and making the most of what you have.
If you or your family are noticing changes, it could be Alzheimer's. Talk about seeing a doctor together.
From my time growing up in Queens watching New York 1 to my time reporting here, I've seen how quickly a story can change. At News All Day, we bring you the news as it's happening, from around the boroughs to local government to your neighborhood. Because our city never stops moving.
3, 2, 1.
Hi, I'm Shannon Ferry with the day's developing stories. But first, stay up to date and informed with News All Day, weekdays from noon to 4.
Welcome back to Inside City Hall. Transportation and traffic are major issues as local communities decide whether to allow the 6 remaining downstate casino proposals to proceed. Each has a plan to mitigate traffic and to improve transit. New York 1 transit reporter Samantha Liebman takes a closer look.
It's a crapshoot as to which of 6 downstate proposals will get 3 casino licenses for live table games. But with nearly every application, a common concern at community hearings.
There are times of the day where the average speed is 5.2 miles per hour. Can you imagine what it will be like with the addition of these visitors?
Talk about an area that doesn't need more traffic.
Quite terrible in that neighborhood because of the Midtown Tunnel, like the entrance and the exits for that. This is going to make traffic even worse.
The 6 casinos have plans to deal with traffic, both increased cars, charter buses, and rideshare vehicles. All the proposals aim to encourage or incentivize the use of public transportation.
I think it's not realistic to think that people aren't driving to a casino. I mean, everyone obviously has the hope that they're going to hit it big when they're at the casino. They're not planning to take a bunch of cash back on the subway, you know.
Representatives for Freedom Plaza across from the UN on First Avenue, the only Manhattan casino proposal still alive for now, argue that most guests will be tourists without cars and that having a hotel close to the UN will reduce the need for travel for attendees during the gridlock of General Assembly Week. The plan in part includes no on-site staff parking, even offering employees passes for mass transit, an entrance along the FDR, not First Avenue, free shuttles to Grand Central and the nearby ferry, and a 24/7 on-site traffic manager. Others, like the Coney on Coney Island, which plans for limited parking on already hard-to-park Coney Island, say having 4 subway lines will reduce traffic. The Coney and Metropolitan Park by Citi Field also advocate for new nearby ferry service. The Coney offers to put up money for it, but getting new routes, whether it's the subway or ferry, hasn't been easy.
We've seen throughout New York City history how difficult that can be, so I'm not holding my breath.
The Queens proposals, Metropolitan Park, backed by Mets owner Steve Cohen, and Resorts World, are close to highways and mass transit. Cohen's project promises to overhaul the Willits Point 7 and LIRR stations.
I still drive my car. You know why? Because I can't
walk up those steps at the 7 Line or the Long Island Railroad.
Metropolitan Park will also add parking garages and revamp the roads to improve traffic flow, as will Resorts World and Empire City in Yonkers near the Bronx border. Resorts World plans to improve the A-train stop at Howard Beach. Both argue they are well equipped to handle traffic since electronic casinos are already operated on their sites. Besides increasing parking, Bally's near the Whitestone Bridge in the Bronx will invest $75 million for a shuttle, additional MTA bus stops, and improvements to a road within Ferry Point Park and the Hutchinson River Parkway.
The Community Advisory Committees reviewing the remaining proposals have until September 30th to make a decision on which ones will move to the state for review. A final decision will come in December. Samantha Liebman, New York 1.
It's time now for a break. Coming up, we'll be joined by State Senator Julia Salazar to talk about her arrest yesterday while protesting ICE immigration enforcement in Lower Manhattan. Stay with us. We are back in a minute.
My time at New York 1 has shown me that in the city that never sleeps, the news never stops. So as the day winds down, turn to the rush hour.
Good afternoon, I'm Monica Perkman.
To catch up on the stories that matter across the 5 boroughs, with in-depth interviews from the city's newsmakers, plus the latest forecast. Catching you up with today, preparing you for tomorrow. Right here on the Rush Hour. Weekdays from 4 to 7 p.m.
There's an international travel plan with Spectrum that was an additional $10 a month, as opposed to paying a ridiculous amount per day for roaming fees. This literally felt like my old phone carrier was reaching their hand into my wallet and just helping themselves to some of my cash. I like having no surprises when it comes to my cell phone bill. And with Spectrum, that's been the case. So it saved me a ton of money.
Real customers, real savings. To see how much you can save, visit spectrum.com/save.
I'm Chris Jakovic. I served in the United States Air Force, and I deployed 3 times. So in 2017, I was serving as an Air Force First Sergeant. Our motto in that role is, my job is people, everyone is my business. But unfortunately in that year, I would lose my own brother, Lance Corporal Adam Jakovic, to suicide. The majority of veteran suicides are from guns. I store my weapons securely, not only for myself, but for my family. My service never stops.
At Spectrum Noticias, we recognize that our New York City community is vibrant and diverse.
Spectrum Noticias delivers balanced coverage of the stories that matter in our communities and across the country.
Our journalists are based in the neighborhoods we cover, ensuring you get in-depth reporting on what's happening in the places we call home.
So join us at Spectrum Noticias. We're always on, always there for you.
Now available on your TV. Check your local listings. Also available on the Spectrum News app.
Welcome back to Inside City Hall. That was a look at video from yesterday at 26 Federal Plaza, a focal point for protesters rallying against the Trump administration's immigration enforcement here in the city. More than a dozen elected officials were arrested. Among them, my next guest, State Senator Julia Salazar. She represents parts of Brooklyn, including Bushwick, parts of Greenpoint and Williamsburg, as well as Ridgewood, Queens, and she joins me now. Welcome back to the program. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
So let's talk about what happened yesterday. Walk us through this a little bit. You were part of a group of about a dozen state lawmakers who came down to Federal Plaza. I guess first, what was the objective in coming down there yesterday?
We know that as elected officials, we have a responsibility to stand up for all of our constituents, regardless of their immigration status. And for far too long, ICE has been, in some cases, unlawfully capturing our constituents, our immigrant neighbors, directly from the courthouses in Federal Plaza, and then holding them
unlawfully, it's been determined now, in immigration detention on the 10th floor of 26 Federal Plaza. We went there, myself and other elected officials who went inside to demand that we observe the conditions on the 10th floor to ensure that people are no longer being held in inhumane conditions. The ICE agents there, DHS, they refused to allow us inside, and we said, look, we have to do everything in our power to be able to stand up to this and reject it. And that not only includes fighting for legislative changes, for policy changes, but also going there ourselves and doing everything in our power, even if it involves civil disobedience.
Now, you said that they're being held unlawfully. Is that because of the conditions inside of that 10th floor detaining? They object to the idea that it's described as a detainment facility, but it's at least a holding facility. And a federal judge has ruled that they need to change the way that they treat some of those being held there, in part because of this video that leaked out that showed the overcrowded conditions inside. So is that the reason you guys want to be there and to be able to observe what's going on inside?
That's exactly right. We want to hold them accountable for what we have learned from leaked video footage, photos, and the numerous accounts of people who have since been released, but were being held for, at minimum, days, some for over a week. And as a judge, as you mentioned, as the judge ruled a couple days ago, a federal judge said that this is not a detention facility, but they are unlawfully treating it as such. And no elected officials have been permitted, including members of Congress. My Congresswoman Nydia Velázquez has previously gone to Federal Plaza to the 10th floor and requested to see the conditions there, and they wouldn't allow her to either. And so we have to continue. I think it's our responsibility as elected officials to continue to demand to see those conditions. When we arrived, it was very clear from ICE agents, DHS, that they were nervous and that they would do anything they could to hide what was behind that door. They even sealed it shut. They zip-tied the door shut. They taped it. And that, which of course is also a hazardous thing to do, but it just demonstrated that they have something to hide.
And so you guys were in the hallway outside the doors, and this was not the kind of choreographed civil disobedience where the officers knew you guys were intending to be arrested, right? That's not how this unfolded.
Yeah, that's right. We took them by surprise, and we really did want to observe the conditions, even though, you know, we were confident that they wouldn't allow us to. The best possible scenario would have been for them to allow us in to observe the conditions and make sure that none of our neighbors are being kept in inhumane conditions there, and that they're not being kept there overnight at all, because that has been determined to be illegal. But instead, of course, they didn't allow us in, and so federal police, FPS, came in and arrested us.
So obviously you were quickly released, but what will be the resolution of the case of your case and those of the other elected officials? I mean, is this the equivalent of like receiving a misdemeanor summons?
It is very similar, right? So several of us, perhaps all of us, were given court dates in November, so we will return. We'll go to 500 Pearl Street and have our cases adjudicated. But I'm not terribly concerned about it. I believe we did the right thing, and we knew what the potential consequences would be.
What can you do as a state lawmaker? Because obviously this is, you know, federal immigration enforcement. ICE is a federal agency. Is there anything that you think can or should be done on the state level when it comes to immigration enforcement?
Absolutely. We should have, this past legislative session, passed a bill called New York for All. Right now in New York City, local law, an executive order actually, prohibits local law enforcement, the NYPD, from collaborating with ICE, from sharing immigration data, information from New Yorkers with the federal government. And we want that to be the case outside of New York City as well. We also know that in New York City, this is sometimes violated, and so there is local legislation called the New York Trust Act that would provide a recourse to people, a private right of action, if their rights are violated in this way, if the local law is violated. But at the state level, we need to pass New York for All to ensure that state and local law enforcement are not collaborating with ICE to kidnap and detain our neighbors and separating families the way they are right now.
Last couple of minutes, let me ask you about politics. You are actually the first member of the Democratic Socialists of America to be elected to the state legislature. And you, of course, support Zohran Mamdani, a fellow lawmaker, fellow DSA member. Have you been surprised at his success in this campaign? I mean, I don't know that anyone, including DSA members, expected him to win this kind of broad support in a citywide race.
Yeah, it has been very pleasantly surprising to see him win so decisively in the primary. I'm very confident that he will be our next mayor. And that is what happens when you do something really ambitious and you set ambitious goals for a movement like this, that you continue to surprise yourself and we surprise each other. But it is a wonderful surprise to see someone who deeply cares about the needs of working people and has a vision for making New York City work for all of us, for people across the entire city.
I wonder, for people like you, when you see Mamdani, I think in the general election, he's had to do a little bit of moderating his positions and even distancing himself a little bit from the DSA platform, you know, whether it's defunding the police or eliminating misdemeanors, you know, that sort of thing. Is that disappointing to see from your perspective, or is that just, you know, what you have to do to win in a general election with a broader electorate?
I don't feel disappointed. As a state senator, of course, I represent a district of a little over 300,000 people, and that's very different than running for mayor and seeking to represent a really eclectic range of viewpoints of New Yorkers. And I know that what Assemblyman Mamdani is seeking to do is represent a much bigger population of people and speak to them where they are. And I think that he will continue to do that. So I support him doing that, even as him seeking to be accountable to that constituency can look different than the work that I do as a Democratic Socialist senator.
All right, State Senator Julia Salazar, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Bobby.
All right, it is time now for a break. Coming up, we will keep our focus on the race for mayor when I'm joined by this week's Friday Reporters Roundtable. Stay with us.
After 30 years of forecasting for New York, I've learned it takes a dedicated team to cover all the weather our city has to offer.
I'm so honored to be a meteorologist here at New York One because as a Brooklyn kid, this is the station that I grew up watching. Morning, noon, or night, our team is here to bring you accurate forecasts you can count on, from severe weather updates to our weather on the ones. Watch the New York One weather experts on your TV and on the go with the Spectrum News app.
Your entertainment the way you want it. With Spectrum TV, all these streaming apps are included at no extra cost. So you can watch anything. Movies, series, sports, reality, news.
Here's a look at today's top stories.
Exclusive originals.
We await your orders.
And even more of your favorites with live TV. Stream across your devices and enjoy anywhere.
See you later.
Get it all with Spectrum TV.
I'm an ex-drug dealer, and I'll be your sub today. 2 milligrams of fentanyl can be lethal. A lethal dose is in here. Who gets it, I won't know.
It's cheap, it's potent, and it's profitable.
The sad reality is fentanyl is being mixed into everything now.
More kitchen now.
My father was a New York City firefighter. My mission, like his, is to serve New Yorkers in a city that doesn't stop when the sun goes down. Being with New York One since the beginning, I'm now honored to join you even earlier each weeknight. Starting at 8 with New York Tonight, we'll explore the latest news developments, followed by New York One at 10 to wrap up your day. So join me each weeknight starting at 8 right here on New York One.
Politics can be more than what we saw under our previous governor.
One grocery store in a borough is nonsense.
I'm going to say no social workers instead of police.
There's something ironic about a person who called for protection for his life, but don't understand why we don't want to defund and disband our police department.
I'm excited to welcome Governor Hochul to our movement.
That's typical of politicians. Flip-flop.
The endorsement you need comes from a voter.
I don't believe these political endorsements amount to anything.
The races are won within 3 to 4 weeks.
There's flotsam and jetsam everywhere, garbage. We got to power spray the streets.
Not only would they not let us in, they duct taped and wire-tied the door.
It is insane that you would have a president that demonizes a community.
He has a romantic view of what the city can be and should be.
Something changes and people begin to feel hope.
Welcome back to Inside City Hall. That was a look back at this week's top stories, including some of the moments from the campaign trail. And joining me now to discuss the race and more are two top journalists in our Friday Reporters Roundtable. Jeff Mays is a Metro politics reporter for the New York Times, and Rebecca Lewis is a senior state politics reporter at City and State New York. Thank you both for joining me tonight. So one of the big stories this week, these endorsements that Zohran Mamdani rolled out, and one non-endorsement, which we'll get to, but I want to start with the big one, which was Kathy Hochul, who wrote about it in a piece in the New York Times that aired, that ran last weekend. But Rebecca, let me get your take on the endorsement. Maybe not a huge surprise, although Kathy Hochul was very clear in that piece in the Times that she does not see eye to eye with Mamdani on every issue.
Yeah, I mean, she really focused on very little policy, and the policy that she did talk about was largely alluding to things that she didn't necessarily agree with, but she really hammered home the Trump aspect. And she said, you know, this is someone who I believe is a fighter who will stand up to Trump. And, you know, when you look at it for her politically as well, she's facing a challenge from her left. She also did not perform terribly well in her first election in 2022. And Zohran Mamdani has got first-time voters out. He's got entire constituencies that we've never seen before out in New York City. And she's going to need a strong showing in New York City in order to keep her position. So this is definitely, I would imagine, as much political as, you know, the Trump aspect for her.
Yeah, what does this mean for Hochul and for Mamdani? I mean, I don't know if Mamdani needs Kathy Hochul's endorsement. He's been doing pretty good without it.
Right.
But it also, I don't know, maybe it legitimizes him in a way that you have a mainstream Democrat saying, okay, maybe this guy's not such a radical, and, you know, people who are kind of somewhere in the middle feel a little bit more comfortable.
Right. I think, you know, Mamdani is holding a commanding lead in the polls right now. And so it makes sense for Kathy Hochul to endorse him. For Mamdani, this is a good sign for him. If he wants to accomplish his agenda, he's going to need help from the governor. He's going to need help from state legislators. So if he wants universal child care, he's talking about raising taxes and, you know, raising corporate taxes to fund that. That's going to have to come from the state. Fast free buses, the governor controls the MTA. So it was good to have her on his side. I don't know if he needed it, just given what he's tapped into in New York City with his focus on affordability. And as you mentioned, his ability to expand the electorate.
So he's got Hochul, he's got the backing of Carl Hastie, the Assembly Speaker, who announced his endorsement this week, and Andrea Stewart-Cousins, the head of the state Senate, who rallied with him today. Those are the three power players in Albany. So does that mean now he's getting all of his initiatives passed in the state legislature?
No. I mean, the governor has said time and time again that she is not going to raise taxes, income taxes, and she has called that her line in the sand, one thing she won't do. And raising taxes on the wealthy, corporate taxes, pied-à-terre, what have you, the legislature has consistently had them in their one-house rebuttals to the governor's budget, and they never make it into the final version. This is not a new thing, and the tax part is a major part of Mamdani's Albany agenda. Now, there's definitely places for them to work together and how to achieve things like universal child care and fast free buses, but you know, it's definitely not going to be a walk in the park.
So you mentioned the benefits to Hochul of, you know, linking herself to Mamdani, but is there any downside for her? Because you see Elise Stefanik, who is the upstate Republican congresswoman who will likely, I guess we can say, be her opponent in the governor's race next year. I mean, she's just bludgeoning Kathy Hochul with the Mamdani thing, and you know, she's Comrade Kathy on the cover of the New York Post. So I mean, this does alienate some voters in the state, right?
It does alienate some voters, but I think the point about Mamdani exciting the electorate, you know, affordability being a top issue, you know, the governor said that was also one of her top issues. And then the sort of fight against Trump, you know, if Mamdani is elected mayor, the way the president has already talked about him, calling him a communist and, you know, questioning him, you can see that he's going to need help and support. So there's an alignment amongst them right there on those issues that I think make a difference.
Let's talk about the non-endorsement of Mamdani that we learned about just in the last day or so. This is Jay Jacobs, the head of the state Democratic Party. I don't know how much ordinary people care about this, but it is sort of extraordinary to have the head of the New York State Democratic Party refusing to endorse the Democratic nominee for New York City mayor, right?
On the one hand, it kind of is, but the other thing to remember about Jay Jacobs is that he wears two hats. He's also the Nassau County Democratic chair. And this endorsement of Mamdani did not play well in the suburbs. The suburbs, especially Long Island, which have been trending Republican because of policies coming out of Albany, they do not like Zohran Mamdani. The independent voters, the swing voters who decide elections don't like him. And so for Jay Jacobs, I think he probably found himself in a very tough spot he's the leader of the party, and the governor, ostensibly his boss, just endorsed this guy who kind of goes against his own views on the party and what plays well in his neck of the woods. Crucial swing district congressional seats on Long Island that are going to be up again next year. You know, it's a tough spot, and I think that maybe it was the smarter thing to do for him to publicly distance himself while the governor still supports him.
Right. All right, you guys, hold it there. We got to take a quick break. I will have much more to talk about with these reporters when we come back. Stay with us.
Here's the deal. People need a place to explore national issues that have an impact on their community. To understand those issues better, we're bringing together our team of local political journalists from across the country to break down what's happening. So join us every week to catch up on the key stories making a big difference across the nation and in your local community.
Watch The Big Deal with Errol Lewis Friday nights at 9 on Spectrum News New York 1. Available on all of your favorite devices exclusively on Spectrum.
My name is Gail, and we are in my showroom for Floor Spire Design House. Getting Spectrum set up for my business was extremely smooth. They had it set up within an hour, and I was online and ready to go and run my business. Spectrum helps me stay online. You know, I have to be able to be online at 5 a.m. when the market's open. Without Spectrum, it wouldn't be possible.
Get up to 4 months free when you bundle award-winning internet. Visit spectrum.com/business to learn more.
Every day tells a new story. At Mornings on One, we're dedicated to bringing you the stories that matter most to start your day. With in-depth coverage of the day's developing news.
I'm Pat Turnham. Here are the stories we're following this morning.
And weather updates every 10 minutes.
Some morning sunshine possible, clouds take over.
It's our responsibility to get you the information you need before you head out the door. Mornings on One, weekdays starting at 6 on the Spectrum News app. Free for Spectrum customers.
Welcome back to Inside City Hall. I'm joined once again by two top journalists in our Friday Reporters Roundtable, politics reporter Jeff Mays of the New York Times and Rebecca Lewis, the state politics reporter from City and State New York. So on the topic of endorsements, we've seen all these people come out in support of Zohran Mamdani, who's been reporting that Congresswoman Yvette Clarke is going to come out and endorse him. Does this mean that we're going to see Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries now come out and endorse them? Is this like the dominoes beginning to fall, or do those guys have other things to worry about?
Well, I'm not sure about Chuck Schumer, but I think Yvette Clarke is a good sign of Hakeem Jeffries. They're, close allies in Brooklyn. And I think Hakeem, this has been dragging on for a while now, and Hakeem is getting questions from Democrats across the country who are upset with him that he is not supporting the city's Democratic nominee. So I think he wants to bring an end to this probably soon at some point. But I think Yvette Clarke endorsement is a good sign that potentially, we could see some support from Hakeem. The issue for him is, he wants to be Speaker of the House. He has, sort of moderate conservatives across the country who may not be pleased with a Mamdani endorsement and what that says about the party.
Yeah, what do you think? Does the Hochul endorsement kind of give cover to some of these other prominent Democrats to endorse?
It's really hard to say. I mean, especially with Jeffries, he has a history with the DSA as well. There's some internal Brooklyn politics between him and particularly State Senator Jabari Brisport. There's been some clashing. There might be some animosity. Now, Mamdani is quite good at mending those bridges or mending those fences and building those bridges. But I think that there is also, in addition to the larger, broader politics at play, there's also sort of the more personal tension there that I think is probably playing into his reticence. But Schumer, he's kind of a wild card.
Yeah. Let's talk about Andrew Cuomo. Cuomo this week faced a lot of questions about his views on Israel. He had an interview with the Times, and the Times sort of played up the fact that maybe he was changing his stance a little bit on Israel. He had some harsher language about the conduct of the war in Gaza. But then he kind of denied he had changed his position when he was asked about it. So what do we make of this?
I mean, I was there in the room, and he definitely made a point of talking about the war in Gaza as horrible, as needing to stop now. This is a man who volunteered to defend Netanyahu, and had been very supportive of Israel. I think what the New York Times see in a poll that was done a couple of weeks ago showed that voters are interested in the way Mamdani is talking about what's happening in Israel, saying that, he's not anti-Semitic. He supports Jewish New Yorkers, but at the same time, he has decried the war in Gaza and has been very explicit about that. So that may have been part of what's leading Governor Cuomo to finally, as the rest of his party is, moving towards the view that what's happening in Gaza is problematic and needs to come to a halt immediately.
And then there's this whole question of whether Netanyahu should be arrested when he shows up next week, which Mamdani has promised to do. And then Cuomo said Mamdani should be arrested if that's what he tries to do. But what do you think? Is Cuomo shifting here on Israel because he sees what the polling says?
Andrew Cuomo knows how to read a poll. And, he's I don't want to say he's flip-flopped on a lot of issues in the past, but he's definitely evolved on a lot of issues in the past that might have surprised people now to learn that he held XYZ positions in the past. So he sees the tides, he sees where things are going, he sees the polls that show that Democrats, and I think a growing number of independents as well, are less on Israel's side than at the start of this war. So you know, it makes sense for him to start to soften that language a little bit, and certainly it still seems much more moderate compared to someone like Mamdani, who says we should arrest Bibi when he comes to when he comes to New York.
Yeah. Jeff, let me ask you about a piece that I know you wrote about this yesterday, and this is Mayor Adams on the transgender issue and bathrooms in schools, kids being allowed to use the bathroom that aligns with their gender identity. All of a sudden, he's singing in a different tune.
Yeah, it was unusual. I was out with him Wednesday, and he was campaigning in Harlem, and he was talking about Mamdani, and then he starts talking about the bathroom issue and how, you know, he doesn't believe that boys and girls should be using the same bathroom. He linked that to Mamdani as having that belief, and then the next day he went even further and said that he, you know, there's mayoral control of the schools, that if he had the power to change that, he would. The issue is that, you know, under the human rights law, under district policy, students are allowed to use the bathroom that they feel most closely identifies with their gender, and the state reminded the mayor of that today. The issue is that the mayor and the city got a letter from President Trump, the Trump administration, saying that they were going to cut millions of dollars in funds if the city did not change this policy. So that letter came just one day before Mayor Adams announced that he was very concerned about this policy. And there's been a lot of pushback, a lot of concern about what this means for protecting children.
Right. All right, guys, we are going to leave it there. Jeff Mays, Rebecca Lewis, thank you guys so much for joining us tonight. And that is going to do it for tonight's show. Stay tuned for another episode of our weekly national political show, The Big Deal with Errol Lewis, at 9 o'clock tonight. Thanks for watching, and have a great weekend, everybody. We will see you the next time on Inside City Hall.
And that's a look at some of what's in the papers this morning. You done with the sports section?
Today's story is about the latest chapter for a beloved local business.
It's a beautiful day with temperatures in the 60s, but showers are expected in the next hour.
In a city that's always on the go, it's important to stop to hear the stories that connect us.
The news that matters to New Yorkers. That's what brings us together. That's Mornings on One.
Weekdays starting at 6.
Exclusively on Spectrum.
My name is Gail, and we are in my showroom for Florist Fire Design House. We are a full production wedding and event company that focuses on florals. Getting Spectrum set up for my business was extremely smooth. They were here the same day, had it set up within an hour, and I was online and ready to go and run my business. You know, I have to be able to be online at 5 a.m. when the market's open. And if I'm contacting a merchant via email or placing an order online, without Spectrum, it wouldn't be possible.
One more row.
Spectrum is reliable, they're committed, they're fast, and they really take care of me as a business owner. Last year, when the really bad hurricane came through, our internet stayed the entire time. One of the businesses down the street, she was like, wait a minute, how are you still online? And I was like, Spectrum, baby. You gotta get Spectrum.
Get award-winning internet for your business. Up to 4 months free when bundled. Visit spectrum.com/business to learn more.
This election year is all about New York City. There are 51 council seats up for grabs, races for our next city comptroller and the next public advocate.
Plus, an unprecedented race for mayor. That puts the power in your hands to decide who will run our city.
Our team of political experts will be covering every angle of this election to keep you informed.